Hi BookTube, this is my October wrap up. A little bit late. It was 39 books, if you will remember. I tried doing 9 books a day for a while. So most of these are manga. And apologies for the setup. I have, genius that I am, I brought up some gummies and then proceeded to spill sugar all over my bed. Also, hopefully my phone will not fall off, but we work with what we have. The first is Engkwentro, Tales of the Strange and Supernatural. This was a pick for Romancing the Gothic. I DNF'd it. It is 4 stories by 4 different authors, and I couldn't. The first one was like 32% of the book, and it did not work on any level for me. I think the story could have been compelling if it weren't a short story. I don't feel like that did it any favours, but I didn't like the pacing, and I didn't like the writing style of it. I started the second one, and that, stylistically speaking, was so much worse. I just could not hack it, and I gave up, which is a shame thinking about it now, but at that point I decided not to join the book group discussion, and I didn't want to give it any more of my time. The second book that I read was Carmilla by Sheridan Fanu, and I was very surprised. This was also a pick for Romancing the Gothic. Did I just show you the cover after trying to hide it? Okay, never mind then. It was also a pick for the book group, and my copy hadn't arrived in time, so I was kind of anticipating several things with the book. I thought it would be hard to read given the time period it was written in. The Gothic has this space for queerness, but I kind of thought it would be a lot more like drawing that line, that tension between titillating and horror, and I'm not saying it's not that, but I kind of thought it'd be worse, you know. I personally didn't find that egregious. I also didn't find Laura egregious. She was a bit ditzy, but I didn't find it terrible, and I was really pleasantly surprised on all fronts. Really, I found it very readable, and I just really enjoyed it. I read this partly because it is something that I've been interested in a while. I saw the web series years ago, and also I am writing a retelling rather, 1920 Shanghai, so I kind of wanted to draw on like the actual book rather than just what I kind of picked up through pop culture osmosis, and I'm very happy because it shored up several of the decisions I had already made in regards to my rewrite. But yeah, as for the book itself, I really enjoyed it. And then I read volumes 1 to 11, and then volume 18 of Ouran High School Host Club, and yeah, so this is about Haruhi, who is on scholarship to this like really super posh school. She stumbles upon the host club looking for somewhere to study in peace and quiet, and ends up breaking a vase, and is to work off her debt. It is a comedy series. It was very big back when I was a tween, and I loved it at the time. I started rereading it last year, and I was shocked because it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it, it's that I didn't find it funny, and I didn't hate it either, but I just could not understand how I had at any point drawn any enjoyment from the series. So yeah, I wanted to give it another go, and there was some bits that I kind of liked, but mostly I was just glad to have kind of said goodbye to the series. I think my favourite was volume 18. Like, I was quite pleased to see where people ended up. But it was mostly just a big kind of meh for me. After that, I enjoyed Immortal Serial. Vicky Lee is my favourite artist, and I think in September I did my art books video, and I hadn't actually gone through the books, so I wanted to kind of, since this was already picked out, I wanted to go through it again and enjoy it, and I did, and it is, as always, 5 stars. And then I went through the 4 volumes that I have of The Record of a Fallen Vampire, which it is, I don't even know how to. So these 4 volumes, again, it was one that I wanted to go through and see how I felt about the series as a whole, and I'm glad that I will not be keeping them. It is, to put it diplomatically, batshit. It keeps one-upping itself. The amount of revelations that you get in just 4 volumes is unbelievable, and I think it could be really enjoyable for that, but my attitude was just confusion as it was going on. Like, why? How do we need this? Why are we doing this? And then it was, so I failed on my 3rd day of attempting to read 9 books. I'd slept most of the day. Obviously 10 volumes I could have. So this is about the titular Nozaki, who is a shoujo mangaka, and it is comedy hijinks in a way that kind of upturns shoujo tropes. In fact, it kind of reads very much like a shoujo manga itself, but it's not. It is one of my comfort series. It's just so funny and over the top, and I just like really enjoy getting lost in it. So yeah, I think it was mostly 5 stars all around this reread. And as always, like, I'm really miffed that we didn't get a 2nd season. Oh well. I have always called The Terracotta Bride my favourite novella. It's by Zencho, and I'm not sure if it is a novella at this point. It might be a novelette, but whatever the case, it is still up there. If it is a novelette, then I would say yes, definitely my favourite. It is about this girl in the afterlife who has been very put upon, and one day the man she has been married to brings home this kind of robot, who is of course made out of terracotta, and she falls in love. And I don't want to say more than that, but it's so good. My favourite book of the month was not The Terracotta Bride, however, it was Yellow Jessamine by Caitlin Starling, and this did not actually come out of left field. It wasn't that much a surprise. I have like a priority TBR about books that really, really excite me. And this was on since last year. The first chapter was available to read for free, and I knew I had to read it, and I was right. When I finished it, I had to sit and stare into nothing for a wee while, and then I think within the hour I had filmed a review. I think it's only 5 minutes, and it's only like 4 videos back. I also have the transcript up on my blog. I have been writing another article about it. I don't know if I've posted it yet though. I'm trying not to let the words get away from me because I could ramble for 20 minutes on it. What I will say is it is very, very gothic and very much to do with the past and ghosts and being haunted by it. The acknowledgement section says, "To those harbouring the weight of self-blame, may we bury it." Evelyn Perdenu on the cover is wearing mourning clothes and a veil, which she has been doing for years. It is beautiful and dark, and you know what the perfect measure for this is? I'm pretty sure finding it was because Jeanette Ng had retweeted a link to the first chapter. So if you know Under the Pendulum Sun, it's not quite that extravagantly gothic and dark, but I would say it's in a similar vein. So yeah, it is probably one of my best books of the year. Next is Orpheus and Myth. It is music and riddle, dreamt lives and overgrowth and tunnels. It is as strange as Labyrinth and Madcap. It is as familiar as Wonderland. It is Orphea by Joan M. Harris and illustrated by Bonnie Helen Hawkins. Now, I have made absolutely no secret of my love for the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. I frequently film in my Hadestown top. This one is not quite as you expect it to be. Actually, rather, it is nothing that you expect it to be. And it follows Faye and her daughter Daisy. Her daughter has died, and she is not consumed, but emptied by her grief. She's hollow and the world is bleak, and one night, while on a run, she ends up in a place that isn't London, and that night she sees her daughter lying asleep in a field through a crack in the pavement, and this is her journey to get her daughter back. And of course, what has been taken by death is not easily or really willingly returned, and the price of it is steep. And it's so beautiful. Honestly, this year has been amazing for books. It's gorgeous. We're going to take a turn now. I signed up to Talia Hibbert's email letters, and there was a link to a free book. And I was not going to say no to a free book. It was Loving the Secret Billionaire by Adriana Anders, and this is about a woman who's working on her political campaign. She's very grassroots, doesn't have much money, is a teacher, and on the campaign trail she ends up at this recluse's house, and they get to know each other. It is really sweet, but again, it's one of those ones that I think that's under 200 pages, and so I feel like it's really well developed, but it still kind of feels a wee bit lacking to me. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but something missing. And then it was one of my reads for the Rocky Horror Readathon. It was The Boyfriend Backtrack by Don Lanuza, and this was, I think, from Romance Class, which is English language Filipino romance novels. This was really good. I personally don't feel like it worked as a romance. So the premise is she has gotten engaged, and she has kind of like a life flashing before her eyes moment when her partner proposes, and she's never really had closure for any of her relationships, and they set out to do that. They set out to give her that closure, and it keeps coming back to this guy. Like, you know who it's going to be, and on one hand, yes, they're very much the perfect couple and the one who kind of should not have slipped through the cracks. But it's also been like a decade at least. So on one hand, I'm very much for them getting back together. On the other hand, I'm like, but do you really know each other though? I couldn't quite get on board with it because of that. And I think also because of that, I kind of felt like they were starting a relationship just as the book was ending. So it wasn't entirely satisfying that way, but I really liked seeing the other ex-boyfriends, and I really liked her and her friends. It just didn't work as a romance for me. Nothing Arabi, romancing the gothic pick again. We did this for the movie night, and a few months ago I'd tried to do the audiobook. It was in the library, and I downloaded it. The woman kind of sounded like she was doing Punch and Judy voices, and I was not here for it. I wasn't actually going to read the book, but would watch the movie, and then I found it for free on Google Play, and I thought, where's the harm? I think this was also on one of my readathon lists. Like, it had been a tentative pick. Frankly, I just kind of found it boring. I find it really hard to read tone in her style of writing. So like dialogue that I thought was, you know, flirty and bantery in the movie, I was just like, you sound like a sarcastic asshole, and I'm not. I don't like. I just found it refreshingly boring, which I was very relieved about after the audiobook. Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas follows this trans brujo who hasn't really been given the chance to, you know, be initiated into the ranks, because it is a very kind of gendered, very binary magic system, and he's struggling for acceptance. He ends up doing the ceremony on his own, is accepted as a brujo, and kind of accidentally summons the ghost of a boy, and they're trying to find out what happened, and they fall in love. So this was another pick for the book group, and like, they were talking about how it works so much better as a romance because mysteries are obvious. I got about 3/4 of the way through the book, and then I thought, wait a minute, it's that dude, isn't it? And then I kind of kicked myself because of course it was that dude. It was extremely obvious. I am just oblivious. But we talked a little bit about the book. Again, my copy hadn't arrived, so I was kind of just listening to the conversation. And it does something that kind of annoys me, and that is in this kind of, I feel like this is a really bad comparison if I don't explain it right. So in some books you find that they try to do this solidarity thing, and it turns out like Moana, or like Raya and the Last Dragon, wherein you're going for like solidarity and you end up just mushing all these cultures together. And I feel like Cemetery Boys did that a little, because it was just kind of like a given that all these places celebrated Dia de Muertos and they don't. So I don't like it, because it kind of imposes a hegemony. And also, if it feels like the point of it is solidarity, and I feel like kind of like smoothing over the differences and erasing it to try and create this does the opposite. I feel like it just doesn't work. So that kind of annoyed me. Also, it is a very binary magic system, and they mentioned at some point, like gender fluid people, and I thought, well, this is really interesting, and they didn't go anywhere with it. Like, you brought up a really interesting point, and you could have done something really interesting with world building, and you didn't. So yeah, that was, I felt it could have been, the world could have been much more expansive in that regard, and I was disappointed that it wasn't. But I gave it 5 stars anyway, because that ending was amazing. It completely blew me away, and all of my kind of criticisms, like, the ending is perfect. It is genuinely perfect. So, also the book with the disc jacket. And then it was Celtic Tales, or rather Celtic Tales, Fairy Tales and Stories of Enchantment from Ireland, Scotland, Brittany and Wales, illustrated by Kate Forrester. And again, this one, okay, look, I like the collection, but there's one story from Wales and like 3-4 from Brittany. Like, it is not evenly distributed, and I think that's such a shame. Also, the first time I read this, I was disappointed, because I was expecting like illustrations, and there are, but there's just one illustration for each. So, the Doctor's Discretion. I think this was the last pick of the month for the book group, and so personally it was not to my taste. Objectively speaking, it was a little bit weird. As far as romance goes, I didn't really buy that they were in a relationship. Unfortunately, I felt like they hadn't gotten to know each other well enough. And it was quite preoccupied with... Okay, so this is a historical romance between Dr. Blackwood, who is a black man, and Dr. Moss, who is a trans man, I think based off of James Barry. And they meet because they're both being asked to catalogue this deceased doctor's collection, which they do not do, because another trans man has been arrested. He is basically imprisoned at the hospital, where they're gonna, and then they mount a rescue for him, which is my favourite part of the book. And then they hide him, and then in like the last quarter of the book, they go house hunting for him. And also, it turns out he is a spy, and I am so confused. And then I read Theirs for the Night by Katie Robert because it was the last day, and this was like under 200 pages. Also, it fit one of the readathon prompts. It was enjoyable. It is erotica, and you know, there's kind of a bit of a story, and I think there's 3 more, which I will get. But yeah, no, it's kind of exactly what you think it would be. It's one girl, 2 guys, and it does what it says on the tin. I decided I wanted to try 4. Ghosttober, Trick or Treat-a-thon, Spooktober, and the Rocky Horror Readathon. I read 2 for Ghosttober, Carmilla and Cemetery Boys, 1 for Trick or Treat-a-thon, Carmilla, 4 for Spooktober, Carmilla, Immortal Fairy Reel, The Terracotta Bride, and Celtic Tales. And for Rocky Horror, I read The Doctor's Discretion by E. Ottoman, The Boyfriend Backtracked by Don Lanuza, and Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Okay, Theirs for the Night was not on any of them. And that is the 39 books that I read last month. It was a lot. This video has been a lot. But thank you for watching. I am going to go to sleep now.